Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 to 20 describe the armor of God. Paul compares God's armor to a soldier's armor, but a soldier's armor is different from God's armor. When we put on a soldier's armor, we are protecting our bodies from an enemy who wants to cut or scratch or bruise us. But God's armor protects our hearts from lies, fears, misdirection, and hate. It's tricky to understand this because we can't see our hearts. We can't see lies, fears, misdirection, or hate. But let's try. Imagine that this fragile egg represents our fragile hearts. As we go through life, our hearts can easily be damaged, but God's armor protects our hearts. To show our hearts traveling life's path, we decided to send this egg through the mail. As we protected our eggs, we talked about how God protects our hearts. We put the egg in a baggie just in case it cracked. The first layer of protection was stuffing. This is like the breastplate of righteousness, helping us to do what's right. Next, we taped tissue paper around the stuffing wrapped egg. This is like the helmet of salvation, which protects us against fear and directs us toward God's grace and love. Then we set the egg in a box, which is our shield of faith. This shield of faith protects our hearts from bumps along life's way. Like shoes of the gospel, these packing peanuts filled in gaps to prevent our hearts from shifting away from God. Then we taped up the box with the belt of truth to hold everything else in place. And the address label directed our package back to us, just as the sword of the Spirit sends us on God's path. God's armor protects our hearts, but putting on this armor takes time. Paul tells us to pray, to talk to God, and to ask for God's help to protect our hearts. Let's do that together now. Dear God, keep our hearts safe. Guide us, comfort us, teach us, love us, protect us. Amen. Now, let's see what happened. The sword of the Spirit guided our egg. The shield of faith protected against bumps and scratches. The belt of truth held God's protections in place. The shoes of the gospel filled in gaps in our faith. The helmet of salvation gave us courage. And the breastplate of righteousness helped us to make good choices.
If the egg had arrived with a little bit of a crack, it just would kind of remind us that sometimes our hearts get a little bit broken. And then we have ways to heal too, with all those things we talked about, with our friends, with our families, okay? But I will prove to you that it was a real egg.
Here,
Ready?
Is that an ostrich egg?